The latest survey by the National Association for Business Economics finds more U.S. companies plan to boost payrolls as sales strengthen and the economy improves. Bill Strauss, a senior economist at the Federal Reserve Bank of Chicago, conducted the analysis for the report. We're pleased to have him join us now from our Chicago newsroom with a little bit more. Bill Strauss, welcome to you. So the headline here, very, very encouraging. Once again, to repeat, respondents expecting their firms to add employees over the next 6 months rose some 37%, and that's up from 29%. So what's behind the optimism?
Well, I think in general, what the report from the National Association of Business Economics shows is that the recovery, which probably began around the middle of last year, has continued through the first quarter and, in fact, strengthened as we have progressed into 2010. So we're seeing an increase fairly across the board in most of the indicators, but especially the very positive news that came out was with regard to employment, which turned positive for the first time in 2 years.
It's also encouraging, right, that the percentage of firms cutting jobs move lower from 28% down to just 13% in April. So respondents seem to be feeling more confident. Would you agree with that assessment?
Yeah, absolutely. We are seeing the improvement in employment is, yes, from the number of firms that are suggesting that they're increasing employment has risen, as well as the number of firms who are indicating that they're cutting jobs has decreased. So on the net basis, there's been a marked improvement.
Still a lot of risks, though, to a full-fledged improvement in the labor market. What do you see those as being?
Well, I mean, I think there remain risks out there with regard to the tight credit conditions. We did ask the survey panel about that. They indicated that that is still impinging on their ability of doing business. But I would also highlight the fact that, in general, the improvement that we have seen is also with regard to an outlook for the economy's performance over the next year. We saw an increase in terms of those that believe the economy will grow at a better than 3.1% rate, rise from 14% of respondents to 24%. So a bit of an improved outlook, and I think that's going hand in hand with regard to the improved employment outlook.
And then what about this length of time issue, right, that people are still without employment? Did that factor into your survey respondents at all?
Well, we didn't get into that kind of micro detail with regard to, you know, how long people have been out of work, and the longer they're out, they tend to be a little tougher to re-engage into the workforce. That we didn't get into that, but that certainly is a concern out there with the 8.2 million people who have lost their jobs since the start of the recession back in January of 2008.
So let's talk about sales now. Some of the other points that you asked survey participants. More than half of the survey respondents said that some portion of their firm's sales actually came from foreign-based operations. So is this going to translate into meaningful export growth for the U.S.?
Well, I think so, and we started to ask this question more frequently in the last number of years because I think global conditions do matter. You know, just before I heard reports with regard to Caterpillar and how well they're doing, and a good deal of their business comes from the improving conditions that they see, especially in some of the developing economies in Asia. So that certainly is helpful to them, and we're seeing that with regard to reports from within our survey that part of this improvement is this with regard to the larger percentages of people being involved in the international markets.
I'm ticking through the topics here for you. Capital spending increase basically held steady from the last two surveys at 25%. Expectations, though, for future CapEx actually deteriorated after improving for 5 straight quarters. I'm throwing a lot of stats out there, but basically with cap spending, what's going on there? What happened in this last month?
So I think we have basically reached a nice level that they're comfortable operating at. Still with capacity utilization rates still on the low side. I think it's hard for firms, especially when we ask them about structures, to be thinking about adding additional amount of buildings there. But they continue to add technology-based equipment, and again, I think that's part of what we're hearing about with reports from some of the manufacturers within our region here in the Midwest. They are doing quite well because if you can bring in some new technology that makes the company more productive, more efficient, higher quality, they are still going out there and spending the money to do that.
I want to ask you about credit conditions as well. This is part of your survey and continues to be a problem for many of your respondents. What do your respondents want to see happen to loosen credit flows?
Well, I think they would like to see it get to the point where the conditions are back what they would be considering normal. And that's going to be, I think, a tough thing to kind of think about in the post-financial crisis level. But I think it's a point where when they are looking at viable ventures, that they are able to access credit markets to do the business that they would like to do. If it requires them picking up a bit more inventories, they would like to see that to be more readily available in order to accomplish that.
Bill Strauss is a senior economist at the Federal Reserve Bank of Chicago. Many thanks.